Alright, so this is going to be Artificer Xy'mox. At first glance, I think that this is going to be a trial and error kind of a thing for us. I'm not entirely sure the timing of the portals, and the portals are obviously the main part of this fight, the portals and the rings. So, just a real quick rundown. Right here, I have this poked as the relic that's in the middle. The relic will have a visual note of a ring either going upwards or downwards, ascending or descending on the relic, and that's going to determine whether the ring that goes outwards is either collapsing or expanding. And those are the Forerunner rings. One of the easiest, I apologize. The main way that we're going to be dealing with this is through the interdimensional wormholes. I know that, you might be able to blink over it or whatever, but the interdimensional wormholes are going to be what's going to take us from point A to point B. And I have those stacked right here. This is going to be the relative positioning that I'd like to see for Artificer Xy'mox, and then because of the traps that are going to be going throughout the phase, we might have to make adjustments. And if so, then we'll probably come around here, and actually these guys might not have to change too much, but range will probably just have to cycle around the room and figure it out. And if that starts to become an issue, then we could start moving these portals over here as well. So let me talk about why I have some of the positioning here that I have. One, because of the rings. Two, because of the tank mechanic. And no, actually, I think that's about it. I thought this fight was going to be a lot more brutal, but I just realized that the entire fight is essentially dealing with the Forerunner rings, and there are some mechanics put throughout the fight, right? So, let me talk about the mechanics one by one. So, like I said, the interdimensional wormhole. Two players will get debuffed. One portal is going to go to the end of the room, and the other is going to go to the middle of the room. Yeah, pretty much plain as simple as that. After, like, what is it, 5 seconds or something like that, then they'll, actually, let me double check on that one. After 8 seconds. Okay, excellent. After 8 seconds, then the dimensional tier will cause the wormholes. So, now we have the Hyperlight Spark Nova. It's basically just a chain lightning ability. We're going to be spread out loosely throughout, I don't know, I guess phase 1. I know there's like an intermission with the ads, so I'm just going to call it phase 1. We're going to spread out loosely throughout phase 1. This is going to help make sure that when Hyperlight Spark Nova is called, we could spread out accordingly and make sure that we're not clipping each other. It's going to hit players one by one, arcing to every single player. So everyone's gonna have to be spread out. It's gonna hit the tank. It's gonna spread. It's gonna hit the tank. Gonna spread, and throughout this entire time, until the end of Hyperlight Spark Nova, we're gonna stay spread out. If these two players are stacked together, then it's gonna arc onto this healer and then arc onto both of these guys, and it's gonna clip them twice, dealing legitimately double the amount of damage up front and double the amount of damage over time. I think it's a debuff that lasts 20 seconds. So it's going to hit you for, like, instead of, say, 8,000, it's now going to hit you for 16,000 every 2 seconds. That's more damage that the healers have to deal with. That would be a good time to... There's really only 2 times that I could think of to use healer cooldowns. One is during that Hyperlight Spark Nova, so maybe like a Tranquility will help keep us intact for that. I don't think we have to use anything too crazy. And then they could come back to this location and then, spread back out, or stay stacked, but lightly spread. My apologies on that. That way it just makes it easy for healers to AoE heal. You know, if you have a healing rain, you want to be as, was it capped at 5 now, so just stay there, right? Throughout the fight, Xy'mox is going to cast his stasis traps that he did in Nathria. It's going to be thrown at random players' feet, so that's another reason why I have this positioning the way that I have it right here, is because I am hoping that we could have like ranged bait it to the sides, to the edges, and then if we have it in melee, then they'll be at this kind of position to where they could just, you know, hop on, shimmy over real quick. You know what I'm saying? They don't have to make huge movements, but basically just keep it so that you're not going to stand into it. You know, those are going to be essentially permanent, or at least for heroic, right? If it's normal, you could cheese it, you could Cloak of Shadows, and then just run around, or turtle stance, and then just disarm them all. But on heroic, they will rearm every 20 seconds, so it would be a complete waste of time to try and do any of that. The only reason why I could see trying to intentionally trip one of these is if rings are happening and we need to make sure that we have, you know, like enough room, I guess. So let's say we're trying to get to the portal and there's a ring inside, or there's a trap over here. We're going to go ahead and, you know, pop turtle stance and then run over it. That way everyone else can make a clean escape, right? I think that's a little bit of a niche scenario, but I want to throw out the possibility of that happening. Let's see here. I think the... Yeah. And then, yeah. So, I think the only other ability for Phase 1 is the Glyph of Relocation. That's where Xy'mox puts a debuff on the tank, and after 5 seconds, he's going to pull every player to that tank. And also put a 50% arcane vulnerability on the tank for a minute. So that's, you know, just tank swap. Standard tank swap. Tank should probably come around over here, because the further away he is from everyone, the less damage that everyone else takes. And then that way, once everyone is pulled onto the tank after that 5 seconds, they're going to go here. They're right next to the portal. They just take the portal back. Or if there is a ring going out, then they could like hold off for a little bit, wait for the ring to expand, and as it's expanding. Cool. Now, Cat, you are in the way of my screen. I cannot see. I apologize. The ring's expanding. We all go in, and now we're back in position. Or on the flip side, if it is collapsing, then how we do that from over here? Well, I guess we would have to double dip, right? If that were the case. Everyone is over here, and then before the edge reaches us, we have to get into here. And then after a little bit, maybe it's over here, and then we're all in here. And then we just have to double dip after it passes this area. And then that ring's dealt with, right? So the majority of this fight is just trying to figure out the patterns and positioning for the wormholes and the rifts. Or not the rifts, the rings, my apologies. Like I said, I think this kind of a setup for positioning should be a-okay and is one of the better ones that I could think of right now. Okay, let me talk about the ad intermissions. There should only be, I believe, 2 times that the ads come out. One is going to be at 75% health and the other is going to be at 50% health. Every time that... No, let me say this real quick. Every time that Xy'mox reaches one of those breakpoints, he's going to add an additional ring to the mix. So at first, he's going to have one ring that we're going to deal with. Once he reaches 75% health, the ads die and he goes into the next phase. He's going to have 2 rings that we're going to have to deal with, expanding or collapsing, and then 50% health, we're going to have to deal with 3 of them. So I think it's going to be honestly quite easy once we get to that 100 to 75% range. Little bit trickier at that 75 to 50%, and then I imagine the majority of our wipes are going to be around that 50% mark, 50% to death mark. I believe it would be adequately smart to blow Lust at that 50% health once he comes back to being active, or around 30%, just so we could get that cleave. Depending on how hectic that becomes, we'll see what happens and then adjust accordingly if we need to either put it into that 100 to 75 or that 75 to 50. But I think either 50% to 30% would be a good time to use Bloodlust. Okay, now that that's done with, I could talk about the ads like I was intending to. I think this is a great time to use healer cooldowns as well. This is the second time, or the second thing that I could think of to where it would be a legitimately good use for it. Unless we're just taking, random damage that we shouldn't. There's going to be, Xy'mox going to have an ever-increasing stacking damage until the ads die. Then he stops doing it. But every 2 seconds, there's going to be a pulse of damage that goes off that just stacks higher and higher and higher. So I think at the beginning, it's not going to be too big of a deal. But maybe around 2, 3, we could start using some cooldowns. Tanks need to make sure that, here, let me see if I could have some of these guys here. Yeah, let's put some of these guys down. So there are 2 ads in this phase. One are going to be Hyperlight Acolytes, and the other is going to be Cartel Xy Debilitators. The Acolytes, which are going to be these guys, if I'm not mistaken, are going to be the big pain in the asses. The Debilitators are really just there to be annoying. They don't do a whole lot. If you kick them, they don't do anything, right? So just make sure that we have kicks on those. We should probably have dedicated kickers just to make sure that they don't deal damage to the raid. If they don't, and as long as they're kicked, they literally don't do anything. They'll come into here, and then we could stack them and kill them. A non-issue. Anyway, we're going to want to make sure that the tanks have these guys spread out like this, so that way they are facing this way and this way. The reason is because, yes, they do indeed have a frontal cone. The frontal cone is going to deal almost lethal damage, if not lethal damage, to anyone who is in a tank. The tanks will take like 60k arcane damage and apply a 30% vulnerability to that ability to the tanks. So we get 1, maybe 2 if they use some pretty awesome defensives before we have to kill the ads. And anyway, we have to kill them anyway, because if they reach 100% energy, then they'll turn it into Archons. And once they turn into Archons, then they'll straight up cause a raid wipe. It deals that much damage, it's just unavoidable. As soon as those ads are all dead, then we'll get back into position, and then start dealing with 2 rings, and then we'll deal with 3 rings, and then we'll kill the boss. And that's it. It's a huge positional fight. As long as we can deal damage, then we don't have to worry about that. We just have to worry about our positioning. One last thing is that I forgot to mention. Whenever we get the glyph of relocation on the tank, it's probably a good idea to use like a stampeding roar or a wind rush totem. I think that's just good in general whenever we're dealing with the rings. I just think it's better to do it here because we're getting relocated and we want to get back into a proper position before any other bad mechanics happen. That's all I have for you guys. Hey, thanks for watching.